Good day, my dear friends. Whether it's morning or evening, wherever you're at, it's hard for me to say. I hope I'm recording this, at least I think I am. Some of this high-tech stuff absolutely uh, confounds me on occasion, even though I was involved in it for almost in my entire life. Anyway, this is Bob Anderson coming to you again with the third in our series of classes on the 26 divine qualities from the Bhagavad Gita. And this is under the guidance of Global International Schools, and I'm the International Director of Education. So I don't think it's necessary for us to go back and do any reviews since I did that in the previous class. So today I think we'll just simply start off with our short meditation, and then we'll get right into our next divine quality, which is self-restraint. But before we do that, I would like everyone to sit comfortably. Cross your legs, feet down, doesn't matter. With your hands in your lap, right hand over the left, palms up, very comfortably. And I want you to now close your eyes. Breathe normally, very gently, and put your attention on your breath. Just pay attention to the gentle inflow and the outflow of air. Allow thoughts to come and go. Just don't pay attention to them. When you can, just come back to put your attention on your breathing without staying on any thought longer than you can remember to come back to your breathing. I will bring us out after 5 minutes. Let us begin. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Open the eyes slowly. Again, rubbing your hands together after meditation just puts some nice warm pressure on the eyes and relaxes them. Just remember, meditation is effortless. It doesn't matter how many thoughts you have. Allow them to simply come and go without paying attention to them. It is only when you realize that your attention is not on your breathing that you simply gently and effortlessly bring your attention back to the inflow and the outflow of air, breathing normally. Treat any sounds or noise or people talking just like a thought. Just don't pay attention. There are much deeper reasons around these few little words, but that's for another day. Suffice it to say, it's like cooking with a recipe. If you put the ingredients in correctly, then you're going to get the right dish that you wanted. You don't have to know how the spices were grown or where the vegetables were grown or how they were fertilized. That's interesting, but it doesn't change the fact that you put all these ingredients together and you get a proper stew. Well, we're simply learning how to turn inward and dive deeply within ourselves so that we can contact that infinite reservoir of intelligence and energy that we call God. It's the divine within each and every one of us. So let us get back into our class on the 26 divine qualities. The next divine quality that we're going to cover is called self-restraint. Now, self-restraint is the power to control the senses when they're excited by pleasant sensations or by unpleasant sensations. It's neither pushing nor pulling, but it is simply controlling and not allowing the senses to run rampant, either pushing or pulling too much. Because he who succumbs to temptation will remain entangled in sense objects far removed from soul knowledge or the knowledge of the true self which is within. Remember, these sense objects are simply events that are passing before our eyes, or we're passing through them with our body. They come and go. That has nothing to do with who and what we really are inside. When we restrain the senses, when we exercise some control over our senses and not let them run wild, then it becomes easier for us to disentangle ourselves from these senses as we turn within to seek that kingdom of heaven which is already within us. So every indulgence in any form of senses lures or reinforces the desire for that experience. It's called a habit. It's a habitual habit. It's like eating too much candy. One piece of candy is great, but a whole bag of candy makes you sick. Well, one element of sensory experience is fine, but if you overindulge in any of these sensory experiences, it reinforces desire for them. It reinforces the desire to repeat that experience and entangles us further in the objects of the senses, far away from our own inner qualities, that divine self within. And repetition of these indulgences lead to the formation of nearly unshakable bad habits. We talked about that. We could either create good habits in terms of remembering and actively working on living consciously these 26 divine qualities, or we could go down that slippery slope which seems very pleasant, but enmeshes us further and further in the delusion of this world and believing what we think we are, and we are not that. We do not want these nearly unshakable bad habits. Once they are formed, they're very difficult to get rid of. So self-restraint is like a safety net. It keeps us from falling into the trap of the senses. It's okay for pretty much any experience, but don't get attached to it. Don't indulge in it. Don't overindulge in it. With every effort to resist, that means we apply conscious effort to resist the lure of many of these bad habits. We strengthen our ability to do so. Anytime we say no, we become stronger. We will be closer to overcoming any of these bad habits. It's just the opposite of indulging in these bad habits or overindulgence with sensory experience. The continual overindulgence forms bad habits. The ability to say no or curb these desires, we become stronger. And the next time it's easier to say no, and we will be closer to overcoming them permanently or establishing a good habit in its place. So self-restraint is very important. It's a fire extinguisher. It puts out the fires of the senses before they turn into a raging blaze and consume us. The next of the divine qualities is called religious rites. Now, I'm trying to be a little bit careful here because religious rites is an outer form or symbolism, okay, for burning the wrong desires in the flame of wisdom. What that means is that we're paying more attention to something greater than, something higher than, of a higher vibration, of a higher order than our base desires or wrong desires. So when we focus our attention, whether it's on a religious rite, whether it's on some form of a prayer that we like, or some ideal that we have that represents goodness and godliness to us, this kindles in us the flame of wisdom. Every thought and act should be to purify a devout heart for the Supreme. That Supreme is within us. It's not anyone sitting on a throne outside of us. These may be representations of aspects of energies in different dimensions of creation, but they all point to that same Supreme, which is the common substance of all things, which is within us. And in order to perceive that Supreme, we must purify our minds and our hearts, or our emotional self. Some form of, whether you call it religious rites or bhakti or love for an ideal that we choose to follow and become more like, these create devotion, love within us. And that love in its full glory is what holds the entire universe together. In the ultimate, the whole of one's life, all of our life, should be a glorious celebration of the divine within ourselves and within all creation. And ideally, every thought and every action should prove to purify our heart more and to be able to offer all actions to God. It doesn't matter if we mess up, good or bad, that's not so important. If we mess up or do something that is not ideal. Learn from it. Don't beat yourself up, nor allow anyone to beat you up. Just learn from it and strive not to do it again. There is no one who can say, I have not committed a sin or I have not made errors. But the point is what did we learn from it? Did we truly try not to repeat it again? Did we truly try, even if we have to do it over and over again? So these outer forms of surrender of one's ego and attachments for sense objects to God or our ideal, no matter what you may call it, these all lead us in the direction of freedom. When I say freedom, I mean freedom from our egotistic framework that I am the center of the universe, when indeed the ego is simply a false identity, simply built up from accumulated memories and experiences. It has no intrinsic stability. It was acquired. When we were babies, we did not have an ego. We were pure. Over time, we began to acquire these layers and layers of misunderstanding of who and what we are because of what we were told and we believed. Some of this, or most all of this, we have to unlearn and realize that we are an integral part of all creation, not a little body and mind moving around a planet for a few years only to be extinguished and die out and be forgotten forever. Rid ourselves from the idea of individual identity and what's left, our universal identity, which is God. So religious rites or prayers or bhakti devotion, they all have their place in purifying the heart and reducing the ego's attachment to itself and to outer things. Right study of scriptures. No, it doesn't necessarily have to be religious text. It could be anything that is uplifting, anything that opens your eyes, your horizons to something more than what we are today. By reading uplifting things of others who have trod the path and gained measures of insight and freedom from bondage. So treat scriptures or good reading of uplifting things as a roadmap, a guide to freedom from bondage. They may tell the tales of others who have trod the path and achieved this. And if they can, so can we. So that is the study of scripture, not simply for acquiring knowledge or more baggage within the mind. In other words, a true seeker does not suffer from not understanding the meaning or practicing the principles of these ideals in life. Theoretical study is helpful when it inspires us to practice these teachings, but only to the extent that they inspire us to practice in our daily life. This is the right reason for studying scriptures or uplifting writings of any sort. So we could say the study of scripture or these uplifting lives of saints or good people that we admire that have made a positive difference in life are only a pointer. Practicing these ideals in our daily life is what leads us to freedom from bondage, from the wheel of birth and death, because of our attachment to the things of the senses or to our individual pseudo-egos. So use the study of scriptures, use the study of good writings, of great souls as a pointer, but practice the things that led them to freedom. Practice the things that will lead you to freedom and not into further bondage. That is the right study of scripture. Not to simply be able to spout tons of phrases and slokas and whatever. What good does that do? You're like a donkey carrying books on your back. You're not living what is in the books, you're simply carrying them around in your head. That's not the right study of Scripture. The right study of Scripture is simply to do so as a pointer, so you can practice these ideals in your life day in and day out. Self-discipline. It's called tapas, and there's a lot of stories about tapas. And some is, when you look back, particularly in Hindu religious writings, a lot of strange things have happened in the pursuit of tapas for what I would call not great purpose, like for greater power or getting boons from gods or whatever. That's, for me, that's total nonsense. Okay. But self-discipline, restraint of our appetites, it doesn't matter. Any of the senses we can call appetites, sound, hearing, taste, feeling. All of these have associated appetites or desire to have more of, but restraint of these appetites and various methods of training the mind and body to withstand discomfort without undue mental and emotional agitation. So there's two pieces here. Self-discipline, including the restraint of our sensory appetites for the purpose of not being drowned in the sensory experience and becoming more in bondage. And secondly, training the mind and body to be able to withstand discomfort without undue mental or emotional agitation. At some point, maybe I could tell you a few stories from my life about that. But that'll be maybe for another time. But suffice it to say, when we have physical pain or some form of mental disturbance, those are events. They're not suffering. Pain is not suffering, be it mental or physical. It is simply an event. What we do with that event mentally or internally determines whether or not we suffer. Suffering is self-induced. Remember that. Suffering is self-induced. Pain, physical pain, is simply something happening to the body. How we treat it. We treat it as a machine that needs some repair or is just broken, but without getting overly agitated or attached to it. And mental suffering is simply the attachment to something that has outlived its usefulness for us. Remember, mental suffering is solely from the attachment to something, whether it be external, whether it be a person, place, or thing, or whether it be to some idea within our head, some experience that we cannot achieve again. When we have that great attachment and we are frustrated because we can't achieve it, mental suffering happens. But we do it to ourselves. Never say to someone, you made me suffer. That's total nonsense. It's a cop-out and it's cowardly. We make ourselves suffer. We make ourselves suffer. Only us. Remember that. And only we can stop ourselves from suffering through conscious right action, through remembering and working on these 26 divine qualities, and through meditation and spiritual practices. This reorients our mind, establishes good habits, establishes more dispassion, more the ability to let go. That is the greatest ability that we can have, is to just let go. Because in the letting go of whatever attachment that we're trying to hold on to, when we do that, suffering automatically leaves. Automatically. Try it, you'll see. Practicing tapas helps devotees or helps anyone attune the body and the mind to spiritual vibrations. So basically what we're saying is that if we're restraining these overexcited appetites, if we're trying to be able to train the body to deal dispassionately with mental or physical or emotional agitation, we automatically begin to increase our vibratory or our energy vibrational rate. It's a natural consequence of that. Conversely, when we overindulge in our appetites, when we say, poor me, and we go into this whole idea of I'm a sinner, or I'm just a poor person who's constantly being put upon by the world. There's nothing I can do about it. It's the whole victim mentality. This lowers our vibrational level. This is the outcome of suffering. The lower vibrational level is analogous to mental suffering. Physical pain isn't. That's simply something that happens. So the real goal is to regain, through self-discipline, the infinite realm of the spirit. So self-discipline, the control of the ego and the senses, like a charioteer controlling the 5 wild horses of the senses. They've got a good grasp on the reins. They don't let them run wild. They restrain them. They guide them in the proper direction. And therefore, they become useful. So the senses are tools to be used properly through self-discipline, mental, physical, emotional, self-discipline. And it also builds within us these right habits where it becomes easier and easier. The horses become well-trained instead of restive and undisciplined, the horses of the senses. The mind itself is a wonderful tool. It's a very, very poor master. Use the mind as a tool, for it is not you. It's simply an accumulation of memories, experiences, ideas that you did not come with. You are the silent observer. The real you is the infinite consciousness, the infinite awareness that is the observer of the motions of the mind. Use the mind as a tool that is under the control of your consciousness, of your true self. Use your senses, but have them also under the control of your true self. Then life becomes spontaneously easier, happier, more enjoyable, and fulfilling. So when we enter the world of infinite spirit, the true seekers cast aside these shabby material attachments. By comparison, the world of the spirit, which is pure, which is total peace, which is bliss, not happiness, but bliss, which is far, far more sublime. These qualities rise in us as these attachments to mental and physical objects and the ego subside. It's a natural consequence. This is the way the universe works. Please listen, practice. Don't just listen to the words, but practice. I guarantee you, it will be well worth your attention. Now, excuse me. I think that might be enough for today. There's a fair amount of information here. So the next class, class number 4, this is number 3, class number 4, we will start off with straightforwardness. Straightforwardness. So I want you all to please listen to this again, maybe. Help to get these ideas more firmly ingrained in your consciousness, in your mind. Again, it's building up good habits, good knowledge that is geared to set you free and not to bind you further. So, my dear friends, as I usually say, be kind to each other, and may God bless you all. We'll see you the next time.